This was a big day for new anime, and I gotta say that today's anime runs on Digibro time. I don't sleep at the same time normal people do, so don't expect me to have watched everything by midnight every single day. But I got around to all 5 of today's debuts, and I gotta say that some of them were pretty disappointing, some of them were better than I even expected. And we're gonna start with a couple of manga adaptations of stuff that I've already talked about before. These are both manga that I covered on Manga Mondays in the past, so I've already discussed the plot and how I feel about that. I just want to talk about how they were adapted into animation, starting with the most recent one that I covered, O Maidens in Your Savage Season. I was pretty positive about this manga. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's written by Mari Okada, and I don't remember the name of the illustrator. I should, though, because she did phenomenal work, and that's kind of what puts the manga way above the anime for me. After watching the first episode, I honestly felt myself feeling like this was so much lesser of a way to enjoy this piece of work that it was not worth continuing. The manga is just paced so well. It's a super enjoyable, super fast page turner. You find yourself having a lot of impact on every single page, where there's these really big illustrations that take up a lot of, page real estate that allow each single line of dialogue to have a lot of impact. And the anime kind of doesn't really have any real sense of flow or pacing. Scenes just play out very flatly. There's boring generic music that just kind of sits in the background and takes away a lot of the punch that some of the funnier dialogue is supposed to have. I really don't think that the voice acting added that much to the show. There wasn't much in the way of sound effects. There wasn't much in the way of timing. The images didn't appear with a flashiness or an intensity that they do in the manga, where when you turn the page, you really get a high impact visual, especially at some of the really dramatic moments. And this episode, basically, there was only one scene that they even bothered to try to present dramatically, which is, the most memorable scene from the first volume of the manga, but it occurs like halfway in. This anime, in spite of the fact that it does actually have pretty much the exact same script as the manga, I don't think they really changed anything. Whereas it took half of a volume to get to this point in the manga, we get there in only one episode, and I think that the manga would encourage you to kind of stop and drink in the moment in ways that the anime doesn't. The anime lacks so much impact that it just kind of feels like white noise up until you get to this one dramatic scene, which is not how I felt reading the manga at all. I felt like I was consistently impressed. Like, right from the start, I was already hooked. I didn't need this big wham moment to make me care about the story. I was already invested. I already felt like there had been so many great moments leading up to that. So with the anime, it kind of felt like it was a nothing burger until you get to the end of episode 1. And even then, the drama of how the scene is presented does not even compare to the manga. The way that the 2-page spread hits you right in the face with an image you're not expecting is just way more intense than the build-up that the anime tries to give the same scene. Also, the music is weirdly inappropriate. I don't want to spoil the scene, but alright, I'm going to spoil the scene because whatever. You should have read the manga by now. I already did a video on it. If you haven't watched that video, go watch that, read the manga, whatever. The main girl walks in on the guy she likes jacking off. And in the manga, this is a big, sudden 2-page spread that then leads into a scene of her running away down the streets of the city, and she keeps seeing sexual innuendo everywhere she looks. So this scene is reproduced in the anime, and the running scene is set to this, sort of pop rock song that makes sense for the running scene, but the problem is that they started the song in the kid's room. It's like, he's listening to this music while he jacks off. And I don't know, I guess some people might jack off to music like this, but it seemed really strange to me that this kid was listening to this particular song while he was jacking off, and I didn't get it until she started running, and it was like the song came from the background to the foreground, and I went, oh, okay, they were trying to do a thing with this song. It just didn't seem appropriate for the previous scene. That's just how I felt anyways. But yeah, overall, I didn't like the way that the character designs were translated to animation. They just look way less interesting. The artwork's not nearly as detailed. There's this weird washed out white filter on everything, as May described it. Why does it feel like I'm watching this show through a cloud? So yeah, overall, I just felt like audio and visuals actually managed to, well, not, just visuals, but audio and animation and, the timing of the anime took away from the manga. So this is another case where I'm going to say, go read the manga. It's a lot better. And I kind of feel that way as well about Fire Force, but this one survived the transition a lot better. There are legitimate reasons to watch the Fire Force anime. The main awkwardness I felt with this show was, first of all, I hate the background art. The background art is very generic. The lighting is awkward. There's like all these gradients in the lighting in the background, but it's not reflected in the characters. So the characters don't look like they belong in the backgrounds, and especially when the animation gets really incredible. It's like very stylized character designs, very stylized animations, very generic backgrounds. It's an odd combination. It doesn't sit right, and the backgrounds are there in every single image, so it's not as though you can avoid it. With the exception of scenes where the art style shifts majorly, and those scenes look great, and I wish the whole show looked like those scenes, but unfortunately it doesn't. And it's inevitably going to invite comparisons for me to Soul Eater, which had been done by Studio Bones. They're both based on manga from the same author, and in Soul Eater the background art was incredible. The world felt very alive and lived in and real. It was like a totally unique setting, which is one of the strengths of Atsushi Okubo's storytelling, is that his stories don't take place on Earth. They take place in weird, creative worlds. And that comes through more in the manga than it does in the anime for Fire Force. So it's definitely a detriment to the series. The other thing is that there's a lot of awkward timing in the dialogue where there's just too long between each character talking. This is a weird mistake. I don't see this a lot in anime. I don't know if we had a first-time director or something or what was going on, but there was a lot of awkward pauses and also weird wide shots, like an uncommon number of wide shots of characters standing in a room that did not feel right for the scene, that just, took away some of the intimacy of the characters talking. So overall, it had a weirdly amateurish feel in the directing, but the animation is really great. I mean, there's tons of fire. I mean, the whole thing is about fire. I had said back in my Manga Mondays on the series that if they were going to animate this, they would need to have some incredible fire animation. They do. There's lots of different styles of fire animation. There's some pretty sick fight scenes. There's some pretty cool parts where the art style shifts majorly, as I mentioned before. So all of that makes it pretty fun. But I will also say that the action directing lacks the clarity that the manga has. And I mean, the best thing about Fire Force, what's made it one of my favorite action manga, possibly of all time, is that Atsushi Okubo is a god of drawing action scenes. He is a god of the page turn, of making a incredibly intense moment of action where, there's so much impact in each image. And the anime, it does the impact scenes well. It has the shouting, the big panning cameras, the explosions of fire. That stuff is done well, but the actual choreography of the action leading up to those moments, the in-between of the impact parts, is a little bit muddled and confusing. It's not as clear as it is in the manga and easy to follow. So I would say that, this is kind of a mess, but it's a better mess than Maiden's In Your Savage Season, which just felt like a wash. It didn't feel like it really had any of the impact of the manga. Fire Force, all the core plot elements are there. It's a pretty direct one-to-one translation. If it weren't for the backgrounds and if it weren't for some of the awkwardness in the directing, I would think it was a perfect adaptation. But those things are pretty serious detriments to my enjoyment. I'm still going to continue watching it. As for Maidens, I will probably drop it because I'd honestly just way rather read the manga. I'll get way more out of it. Fire Force, I already own 4 volumes of the manga. I will probably be significantly ahead of the anime for a long time. So, You know, I'm down to watch it for a while and see if it maybe improves, see if maybe some of that awkwardness goes away, or if they do better on backgrounds in later episodes. You never know what'll happen. So, those are the two that I already talked about in Manga Mondays. Now let's talk about the other two shows that I'm definitely not watching more of. One of them was Granbelm, which is the latest in Moe mecha shows. Kind of reminds me of that one Moe mecha show from a couple years ago that had like a really troubled production. I can't remember the name of it. But this one has the opposite problem of every other modern anime, in that I actually think the backgrounds look pretty good, and I like the overall color aesthetic of the show. I like the tone of it, but I don't really care for the character designs, and the mechs look fucking terrible. These are some of the worst mecha designs I've ever seen. They're all like these sort of super deformed, really short and wide mechs with just awkward, unmemorable designs. They look like they would not even be good enough for like an off-brand SD Gundam Force fucking series. Like they're terrible looking. And the characters right away come off as obnoxious. The way that they're portrayed in this first episode, a lot of the characters have what I will call edge face. That thing where a character's like screaming and their mouth gets all like warped and their pupils shrink and they're just like a screaming insane person that's used in all the edgelord shows. Like, I can't stand that characterization, that kind of like portrayal of a character. I think it immediately turns me off. So, you know, I thought the characters were really annoying right away. It struck me as kind of being in the vein of like the dark and edgy magical girl shows, or just dark cute girls do dark things, I guess. Can we call that the genre? But this one has mechs. The mechs are terrible. The mecha action is terrible. Just overall, I was pretty immediately disinterested in this one. I did not finish the first episode, and I do not think I'll watch any more. And then we have Joshi Kosei wa Murazukai. This is one of those high school girl comedies that's very deadpan and dry. There are some people who I think are probably going to think this show's hilarious. I've seen other shows with a similar sense of humor to this one that a lot of people thought were funny, and it did nothing for me. This falls into that category. And this one doesn't even have, like humor-wise, I would compare it to something like Asobi Asobase, but that show had, like, great animation, at least. It had, like, you know, gags where it kind of kicks into overdrive. What I watched of this first episode anyways did not have anything like that. In fact, it was quite ugly. And the jokes just weren't landing for me. The characters, again, seemed annoying, didn't laugh, just kind of, I was like, well, this is like an obvious no. So that one, not even going to give the time of day. So now let's talk about the best show that came out today, the one that I'm actually excited about, that I will definitely be watching probably all the way through, because I enjoyed the first episode so goddamn much, which was Dr. Stone, the latest Shonen Jump adaptation. I've heard a lot of good things about the manga of Dr. Stone. Hadn't checked it out, so, you know, in total fairness, it could be that the manga for this one's better too, but the anime was legitimately great. First of all, the artwork looks fantastic. All kinds of lush, incredible looking backgrounds that made the world feel very alive. It was interesting to look at. I wanted to spend time there. There's also a phenomenal soundtrack. The orchestral music in this show is bombastic, intense. It makes the scenes. I would say the audio-visual design of this reminded me a lot of Log Horizon in a very good way. And it made me want to... It just made me want to experience whatever was going to happen in this story, just to get to look at this art and hear this music. The character artwork is actually fascinating in this show, because I don't know if this is the first time that Boichi's art has ever been done in animation, but if you've never read any manga by Boichi, he is known for drawing, like, somewhat realistic, very detailed character art. However, he never draws the characters exactly the same way twice. Whereas most anime and manga is like about having a consistent character design that you reproduce over and over again, like as closely as possible. Buichi's totally the opposite. He will draw the characters so differently sometimes you literally can't tell it's the same character. And I don't know how much he really does that in Dr. Stone in particular, having not read it. But the anime kind of captures that feeling where they really just didn't try to draw the characters exactly the same all the time. It felt like they were basing them off of whatever the original art must have been for each shot and not trying to lock them to a design, which is crazy. Like, I don't think I've ever seen an anime take that approach to adapting a manga. Usually they will make it more consistent. Maybe they did make it more consistent, but it's still not, you know, the way that most anime looks. The characters really morph scene by scene in ways that I found appealing. I mean, the character designs in Dr. Stone are pretty ridiculous. They're very Shonen Jump. They're like in the vein of like Toriko or something. You know, the main Dr. Stone himself, if you will, has like his hair is like a giant green onion of spikes. And, you know, you get the muscular idiot main character who's got like these weird lines on his face for some reason, and the girl who he's in love with who looks like a generic 2002 waifu with like headphones on, but she's pretty cute regardless. I mean, she captures that 2002 appeal. It's just weird to see a character design like this in the modern day. But the plot conceit of this show is absolutely brilliant. The idea is that one day a catastrophe just turns everyone on Earth to stone, but they are still conscious inside of the stone. And 3,700 years pass. All kinds of natural disasters happen. The world is completely reshaped. Nature overtakes buildings. Lots of fucking people die. You know, lots of their stone bodies get cracked and broken. But our main character, who is this idiotic, muscle-headed, you know, just a do-gooder. He's a total goody two-shoes. He was going to confess to this girl that he's been in love with for a long time, right before the catastrophe happens. And through the sheer willpower of his desire to get to confess to her, he keeps himself alert and alive for the whole 3,700 years. And meanwhile, his friend, who had been like just hanging out in the chemistry room at school and basically running experiments. He's like this super genius guy, like a clearly, you know, extreme level deductive reasoning, also extreme science knowledge guy. He had kept himself awake the entire time just by counting. Like, all he did was think and count in tandem for all these years so he could keep track of like what time it was and what day it was and like when things were happening so that he would know all that going forward. So like, what's so great about this conceit is that like only characters with this ridiculous of extreme personalities could you believe would come out this way. Like, not only that they could keep themselves alive for that long, but that they would manage to like be the same people they were just because their personalities were so ridiculous in the first place. And they're really entertaining to watch and have great chemistry. There's the fact that, I can't remember his actual name, so I'm just going to keep calling him Dr. Stone. Dr. Stone himself, you know, he has this sort of admiration and respect for the other guy, even though he's an idiot. Like, he constantly calls him an idiot, but like, he clearly likes the fact that he is so reliable, that he's consistent, you know, he's always going to make predictable decisions, and he is good-natured. So it's like he can kind of use him, but he doesn't just see him as a tool. It's like he respects him for being that kind of person and is going to put him to the best use possible. You know, Dr. Stone himself, while he has that like sociopathic level absurd genius thought and ability to control people, his ambition is to restore society, to continue the human race, to figure out how they can, you know, rebuild. And he's interested in helping people. He needs humans to do that. And like, he has been alive. He managed to wake up like 6 months before the other guy, and has, because of the fact that it takes so much effort just to keep yourself alive, when you're living off the land, while barely being able to have time to experiment and, run tests on creatures to try to cure the stone shit. He hasn't really been able to do all kinds of crazy science yet. Now that he has this guy who can help him, it's like, okay, now we can build from here, which is fantastic. I mean, that's exactly how society came to be in the first place. It's that the only way that we have room to make progress is if there are, people who can sort of till the fields while the other guy goes and thinks and builds the new thing that will till the fields for you, so it's a great way to represent how progress actually happens through the use of a character who's, bringing modern science back to the Stone Age, but, it's not magic. And what's great about the series is that the theme of it is about how science is the long, arduous process of solving problems. That, there's nothing that can't be explained or addressed by science, but that doesn't mean it will happen quickly. It is a slow, arduous process that involves countless experiments, that involves, never giving up, always progressing to the next stage. I very much think of this as like an otaku hero's journey kind of story in terms of what its themes are, but taking the approach of just cold science and making it more broadly applicable so more people could appreciate it. I think it's a great fucking series with a great message. All the things I said were bad about the other shows I talked about are good about this show. The timing is great from scene to scene. The dialogue is well done, well delivered. Comedic scenes have a ton of impact. Dramatic scenes are well done. Fucking the voice acting is great, and it adds a lot to the characters. There's a moment when they free their first bird from the stone, and it takes off, and the muscle guy just screams like, "Whoa!" And like that makes the scene, his voice just echoing over the amazing music. The OP was great at the end as well. I have nothing but praise for Dr. Stone. Enjoyed every single goddamn second of it. Would love to see more, especially because, again, I've heard good things about this manga. I have never heard anything about it having a downturn in quality. If anything, it seems like people think it got even better as it went. I don't know how long the anime will go for, but no reason to be anything other than excited for that one. So that's the one I'm most excited about continuing. Fire Force I'm still going to watch for a while longer just to see how it is, see if it picks up. Probably won't be continuing the other 3 shows at all. So Friday next week will probably come out a lot earlier than it did this week. That's it for today's anime. If you didn't notice, I put out an ad for my fucking t-shirt earlier, so go watch that and buy a shirt. There's still supply left. You have a chance as of, if you're watching this today it came out, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not 3 days from now. I don't know how fast I'm going to sell out these shirts, but they're still available at the time of this recording. You can also, of course, become a patron. For even $1, you get access to days worth of content that is either original for patrons or was stripped from the internet and is only available on other websites that are linked to through my Patreon. Oh, I guess that's all I have to say in this one. I'll see you tomorrow.